You think a drone jockey from some air-conditioned box in Nevada is going to teach my operators a damn thing about close-quarters combat? The words, sharp and dripping with condescension, echoed through the tiered observation deck of the kill house. The assembled SEALs, a collection of hardened warriors carved from granite and resolve, let out a ripple of derisive smirks. Their leader, Senior Chief Thorne, stood with his arms crossed, a mountain of a man whose very presence radiated arrogant confidence. He was gesturing towards a lone Air Force captain who stood by a small, unassuming console. She was slight of build, her flight suit looking a size too big, her posture more academic than athletic. She offered no reaction to the insult, her gaze fixed on the glowing screen of a battered datapad clutched in her hands. Her silence was a vacuum in the room full of bravado. But in the back, away from the others, an old Master Chief wasn't laughing. He was watching her hands, the way her fingers moved with an unnerving economy, a practiced grace that spoke a language older and more lethal than words. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowed. He had seen hands like that before, but never in a place like this. If you believe true professionals let their actions speak for them, type silence in the comments below. The humiliation was a deliberate and public spectacle. Senior Chief Thorne paced before the observation window, his voice a booming instrument of disdain. Captain Eva Rostova, gentlemen. She's here to provide integrated tactical support. That means while my men are kicking indoors and taking fire, she'll be pushing buttons from 1,000 miles away, sipping a latte. He gestured to the simulation screen, a complex multi-level structure filled with hostile contacts and a single high-value hostage. It was the Kobayashi Maru of training scenarios, a no-win situation designed to shatter the nerve of even the most seasoned operators. This isn't a video game, Captain. There's no reset button here. Every decision has consequences. My men are the sharpest end of the spear. They don't need an algorithm telling them how to fight. The onlookers, a mix of Army Rangers, Marine Force Recon, and other Tier 1 assets, shifted uncomfortably, caught between protocol and the raw tribalism of the moment. Thorne was asserting the dominance of the physical warrior over the unseen technician. Rostova simply looked up from her screen for a brief moment, made eye contact, and gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. Her calm was an island in a sea of testosterone. Thorne scoffed, turning his back on her. All right, Captain. Show us what you've got. Try not to get any of my boys virtually killed. The simulation began with a jarring flash of red emergency lights. Team is stacked, a voice crackled over the comms. Thorne leaned into his own microphone, his voice laced with sarcastic urgency. The door is rigged with a pressure plate IED, Captain. The textbook says flashbang and breach. What does your little computer say? On the main screen, the tactical overlay flickered with data streams only Rostova could decipher. Her fingers danced across her tablet, not typing, but conducting an orchestra of unseen assets. She analyzed thermal signatures, acoustic resonance, and Doppler readings from the wall itself. The data painted a picture no human eye could see. She ignored Thorne's baiting question. Her voice, when it came, was calm, clipped, and devoid of any emotion. It cut through the tension with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Hold breach. Stand by for non-kinetic entry. 3-second delay on my mark, Thorne sputtered into his mic, delay. We're on the clock. You'll lose the element of surprise. But Rostova's focus was absolute. She tapped a final sequence on her screen. Mark 4-3 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. The observation room was filled with a deafening, expectant silence. Then, it happened. Not a thunderous explosion, but a sharp, localized thump. A perfect circle of the concrete wall next to the door disintegrated into fine powder, collapsing inward silently. The silence that followed was more profound than any explosion. It was the sound of a dozen hardened warriors having their entire understanding of reality rewritten in an instant. The smirks had evaporated, replaced by masks of slack-jawed disbelief. Senior Chief Thorne stood frozen, his knuckles white where he gripped the console. He frantically replayed the sensor data, his mind refusing to accept what his eyes had just witnessed. It wasn't an explosive charge. The logs showed she had used a coordinated swarm of microdrones to emit a focused resonance frequency, matching the unique structural harmonics of the concrete and shattering it from the inside out. It was a weapon of pure physics, surgical and silent. Before anyone could process the impossible breach, Rostova's voice was back on the comms, a steady, guiding presence. Entry point clear. Hostile 1, 7 meters, 9 o'clock, behind soft cover. Hostile 2, 12 meters, 2 o'clock, elevated. Hostage is viable. Go, the SEAL team, shaken from their stupor by the sheer authority in her voice, flooded through the new opening. 2 suppressed shots echoed, exactly where she had directed. The simulation ended. Total time from mark to hostage secured, 12 seconds. A breathless voice came over the radio from the team leader, Control, how in the hell did you know? In the observation room, all eyes turned to the quiet captain, who was already calmly calibrating her systems for the next phase, her expression utterly unchanged. From the back of the room, a figure moved with quiet authority. Master Chief Franklin Gunny Marcus, a legend whose service record stretched back to the shadows of forgotten conflicts, walked past the petrified Thorn. He didn't spare the senior chief a glance. His focus was entirely on the small console where Rostova worked. He stood beside her for a moment, not looking at her, but at the after-action report materializing on the main screen. With a few practiced keystrokes on a nearby terminal, he bypassed the standard security clearance and pulled up a single, heavily redacted personnel file. It was hers. Name, Eva Rostova. Rank, Captain, USAF. Primary specialty, Unmanned Aerial Systems Pilot, he read aloud, his voice flat. Thorn let out a short, cynical bark of a laugh. See? A drone pilot, Gunny ignored him, his finger tracing down the screen as more of the file declassified under his high-level credentials. Secondary designation, Project Chimera. Combat hours, 4,200, all classified. Commendations, Distinguished Flying Cross with Valor, Bronze Star, Joint Service Commendation Medal. Mission classifications, Tier 1 Support, Direct Action Overwatch, Kinetic Engagement Authority. He paused, letting the weight of the words settle into the now frigid room. He scrolled to the final line. Last assignment, Task Force 77. The name landed like a grenade. Task Force 77 wasn't a real unit. It was a ghost, a myth whispered about in classified briefing rooms, a designation for operations so sensitive they were never officially recorded. They didn't just support the elite, they were a level above them. The room, which had been silent before, was now holding its breath. Gunny turned slowly, his gaze sweeping over the stunned faces of every operator in the room, finally landing on Thorn. His voice was low, but it carried the unshakable weight of absolute truth. Project Chimera wasn't about flying a Reaper from a container in Creech, Senior Chief. It was an experimental program that integrated a single human operator with a swarm of up to 32 autonomous microdrones. The operator became the sensors, the breacher, the weapon, and the overwatch, all at once. He took a step towards Thorn. Captain Rostova doesn't support the breach team. For the last 5 years, in the most hostile territories on this planet, she was the breach team. She has more single-handed kinetic engagements than your entire platoon combined. Gunny then turned back to Rostova. In a gesture of respect so profound it was almost shocking, the old Master Chief removed his command cover and held it over his heart. My apologies for the welcome, Captain. We were not properly briefed on the nature of your expertise. The story of the Ghost Pilot and the Impossible Breach went through the Joint Special Operations Command facility like a wildfire. The simulation recording was classified within the hour, but the legend was already spreading through encrypted chats and hushed conversations in the mess hall. The name Rostova became a new kind of adjective, a shorthand for a level of silent, terrifying competence that defied conventional understanding. The acoustic entry technique was unofficially dubbed the Rostova knock, and engineers from DARPA were brought in to study the data, shaking their heads in disbelief. The incident became a defining moment, a stark line drawn between the old world of brute force and a new era of precision warfare. Senior Chief Thorne was stripped of more than just his arrogance, he was stripped of his certainty. The foundation of his entire worldview had been shattered. He saw with horrifying clarity that his pride, his loud and boisterous confidence, had made him not just a fool, but a liability. His ignorance could have gotten his men killed, and that was a sin he could not forgive himself for. He had mistaken silence for weakness, and in doing so, had almost walked his team into a grave of his own making. The next morning, Thorne found Rostova not on the observation deck, but in the quiet solitude of the base library, her datapad open to complex energy schematics. He didn't approach with bluster or excuses. He stood before her, his massive frame seeming smaller, his head slightly bowed in a universal sign of deference. "Captain," he began, his voice quiet, stripped of all its former arrogance. "Ma'am. There's no excuse for my behavior yesterday. I was unprofessional. I was ignorant. And I was wrong." He looked her directly in the eye. "What you did. I've never seen anything like it. It's a whole new way of fighting. I was wrong to disrespect you, and I was wrong to underestimate your service." He took a breath, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "I would be honored if you would teach my team what you know. Teach us how to see the battlefield the way you do." Rostova looked up from her screen, her expression as placid as ever. There was no triumph in her eyes, no hint of, "I told you so," there was only the mission. She gave another one of her small, efficient nods. "Of course, Senior Chief. We can start with microdrone sensor fusion and non-kinetic entry principles. Be on the training floor tomorrow. 0600 that was all. For a true professional, competence wasn't a tool for settling scores, it was a tool for sharpening others. 1 year later, the entire doctrine for urban assault at the facility had been fundamentally rewritten. The Rostova Doctrine, as it was now officially known, was the gold standard, a mandatory course for every operator, from Green Berets to MARSOC raiders. It emphasized intel, sensor integration, and finding non-kinetic solutions before a single boot ever touched a door. Training simulations that had once been bloodbaths of virtual casualties now ran with an almost eerie efficiency. Senior Chief Thorne had become the doctrine's most fervent evangelist, relentlessly drilling his men and new trainees to think before you kick. He often used his own story, the tale of his public humbling, as the ultimate cautionary lesson against the blinding arrogance of assumption. He taught them that the loudest man in the room is often the one with the least to say, and that true strength was measured not in decibels, but in deeds. Captain Eva Rostova was long gone, reassigned to another black site project as quietly as she had arrived. She left no photos, no awards on the wall, no paper trail. Her only legacy was a small, simple brass plaque affixed to the wall of the main kill house, next to the very spot she had breached. It bore no name, no rank, no unit patch. It was etched with only two things, a complex diagram of a resonance waveform and the date of the simulation. It needed nothing more. Every single operator who walked through that door knew exactly what it meant. It was a permanent, silent testament to the quiet professional who had remade their world. It was a reminder that the most dangerous weapon on the battlefield isn't the rifle in your hands, but the disciplined mind behind it. It symbolized the undeniable truth that true power doesn't need to announce its presence, it simply demonstrates its effect. Her legacy wasn't in a file or a medal case, it was in the improved survival rate of the soldiers she'd never met, a quiet echo of competence that would save lives for years to come. True strength is not found in the volume of your voice, but in the precision of your actions. It is a quiet confidence born from thousands of hours of unseen discipline, a competence so profound it requires no introduction and no validation from the ignorant. It proves that respect is not a birthright of rank or reputation, but a currency earned in the silent, unforgiving arena of results. Legacy isn't about the medals you wear on your chest, but about the standards you leave behind for others to follow. It's the echo of excellence that continues long after you are gone. For more stories where silent competence triumphs over loud arrogance and where quiet professionalism defines their worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.